Hi everyone, welcome to our second Lunch and Learn addressing case management and reducing recidivism. I'm Aureen Wilford, a research psychologist and research analyst at Utah Criminal Justice Center. Today's Lunch and Learn is the second of 3 sessions that is addressing case management. The next skills series, just for your information, will be on using program data to reduce recidivism, and that will be offered in October. And a final event is a reading group that will be offered in December. The reading group will discuss the second edition of what works and doesn't in reducing recidivism. Also, for your information, these videos will be recorded, and those recordings will be shared on the College of Social Work and Utah Criminal Justice Center's YouTube sites. CEUs are available for attendance or viewing of all 3 of these case management sessions. Attendees will be asked after the 3rd session, which is next week, the 24th of September, to follow a link to a short evaluation and a quiz. And after that, their CEU certificate will be sent electronically to them. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Emily Salisbury, for those of you who have not yet met her. She is an associate professor and our newly appointed director at Utah Criminal Justice Center in the Department of Social Work here at the University of Utah. She will be hosting these 3 case management lunch and learn sessions. Emily is a trained criminologist, and she has a master's in forensic psychology and a PhD in criminal justice from the University of Cincinnati. Her primary areas of expertise are in correctional rehabilitation, risk needs assessment, and understanding the unique needs and risks of system-involved women. Emily has also co-developed the WERNA, the Women's Risk Needs Assessment Tool, and has had extensive experience in training people on how to use and implement this gender-responsive tool. In today's session, Emily will build on from last week's discussion on identifying risks and needs in clients and building in treatment and services into case plans. Case management, as you know, is a crucial part of the behavior change process. Today, Emily will review a case study and begin to create a case plan for building change. Further, Emily will take us through the process of case management using the WERNA. I'll now hand the time over to Emily.
Thanks so much, Aureen. Much appreciated for the nice introduction again. So welcome back to those of you who are joining us for the second session for this series. For those of you that missed maybe the first one was recorded, and we can always send you the link and get it back to you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're all very much used to this stuff now in Zoom, Zoom Life. And get you to the learning goals. So in the first session, we really focused on the first 2 goals. And today I'm hoping to focus in on applying, of course, case planning strategies using clients' risk strength vignettes. And so you should have received something from Jessica Seawright on the case plan for Melanie. And if you didn't get a chance to take a look at it beforehand, it's not a huge deal. We'll kind of get you up to speed a little bit. And then of course today and next week, I'm hoping to start building your confidence and starting to create case plans with your clients. So we are going to practice a little bit, and I wanted to model sort of what building a case plan with this vignette with Melanie really starts to look like. So I'm going to back out and show you. This is what was sent to you. This is the case plan for Melanie. And of course, we don't quite have time in a half an hour to really go over the details of the case plan, but Melanie has a number of issues. She has a number of criminogenic needs that you can see here in terms of where the check marks are, as well as some strengths too. So one of the nice things about the Women's Risk Need Assessment is that we identify people's strengths as well. And we're going to use that in case planning too. So number of things. What we're going to talk about today is antisocial attitudes and planning for building a case plan around Melanie's antisocial attitudes. Okay, so as a reminder, this is what the case plan looks like. At least what we use with the Women's Risk Need Assessment. You may use something different, and you can modify this as much as you want. This is at the end of also what was sent to you in your materials. So we're gonna, I'm the case manager, Melanie is the client, of course, and we're gonna target one particular need. So we talked about last week, really trying to focus in on some of the things that we know are criminogenic for justice-involved people. And so in the discussion with Melanie, we hypothetically have come to a decision together in joint case planning that she needs to work on some things around her antisocial attitudes. And so that's the criminogenic need. Now we have to think about what goals are we going to go after together in thinking about reducing, of course, those antisocial attitudes. So what are goals? What do we talk about when we think about it, right? You and I probably take it for granted a little bit about being able to create goals and the steps and the activities and the things that we can take in order to reach our goals. Goals are about long-term results. We're really only looking for one goal for each criminogenic need. We're not necessarily looking for something that's specifically measurable. We'll be looking for something like that with the tasks. And then we want to make sure that it states the desired behavior change for the specific need that we're focusing in on. Importantly, we're only going to focus on one need at a time when we build a case plan, right? If we do too many criminogenic needs at once, it just starts to feel overwhelming for everybody. We might work on different things together once, multiple criminogenic needs, as we get to know our clients and they start to build their self-efficacy and being able to achieve things. But for today, we want to focus really just on one goal. There's a number of examples of goals, right? Endless numbers of things that we can talk about with our clients. To build and sustain healthy relationships with pro-social family members, maybe that's something that we need to work on. To locate a safe housing option, because actually for many justice-involved women, unsafe housing has shown to be a criminogenic need. We don't oftentimes hear that with justice-involved men. To maintain legitimate pro-social employment, of course, is important, or maybe to manage anger with pro-social coping skills. And so those are sort of, kind of these abstract things that we're going after along with the client and trying to help her or him think about, what are those long-term achievable goals that we can get to. So choosing goals, right? These are long-term things. We also want to identify the strengths that the client has in order to support him or her in attaining this goal. So many times, justice-involved people, particularly women, I might add, but certainly sometimes the men that we're working with can't even identify some of their strengths. And so it's really important for us to try to take as much as we can a strength-based approach to help build their self-efficacy and starting to create and move towards their goals. We want to note any responsivity factors that the client might have, which could stand in the way of his or her success. And those are those specific responsivity issues that many of us are well aware of. Those can be things like lack of motivation. They can be things like, of course, lack of transportation to get to a treatment group, lack of childcare, maybe they're homeless, right? A whole host of things that are not necessarily criminogenic in the sense that they're going to be predictive of antisocial behavior in the future, but they're things that we have to work towards ethically in order to help them reach their goals. So with Melanie, if we're going to be targeting antisocial attitudes with Melanie, our goal is to reduce antisocial attitudes. And that might seem really, sort of, okay, well, that's pretty abstract. It is, and it's sort of intended to be, right? We're going to get more specific when we start talking about the tasks and the activities. In this goal, we also want to identify any potential barriers. If you haven't had a chance to go through, of course, Melanie's vignette and the case plan, you'll notice once you read it that she's got not a whole heck of a lot of support from her boyfriend or her friends. So really targeting and trying to do better in treatment groups might be kind of difficult when she's got these other folks in her life that are not really pushing her to change. But she does also have a couple of strengths that were identified, particularly that might help with her antisocial attitudes in reaching her goal. She actually does have a high sense of self-efficacy, and that just means her ability to achieve her goals. She also has quite a bit of family support, so we're going to put that physically in this case plan. This is a document that you would have in front of you at the desk working with your client and helping her in conversation with her, taking ownership, taking some conversational skills, of course, not just telling her what we're going to do, but working with her to try to identify what she's ready to work on first. So what are the tasks? We got to move towards tasks. We've identified, right, the need, the goal, the barriers, and the strengths. What's here for tasks? Tasks are the steps that the client has to take, right? We all, in order for us to make behavior changes, if I want to go to the gym a little bit more often, right, because I'm sitting in my house all the time, I know that I have to take some steps, some tasks, some things in order to really figure out, all right, which gym am I going to go to because I'm new to the community? All right, I got to look that up. What about some other things like, okay, what time are the fitness groups? What's the schedule look like? And oftentimes they're really quite, specific. So these are the short-term steps that it's going to take to reach that broad goal. Oftentimes, of course, there's multiple tasks that we have to take in order to reach our goals. And perhaps most importantly, we have to talk about stating these in terms of SMART tasks. So let's talk about what that means, right? Some of you've probably heard this before because it's quite common in case planning. These tasks need to be specific, they need to be measurable, achievable, or I sometimes refer that with clients as doable, realistic, and time-based. If somebody, if one of the criminogenic needs that you're targeting is, gaining gainful employment and legitimate employment, if today is September 17th, I believe, right? We're not going to ask clients to get a job within a week, especially in this market. We need to be realistic. They have to be measurable. How are we going to know if somebody's actually searching and looking for a job? So, right, one of the things that we can have in terms of her task or his task is to come back with, the information of the jobs that he or she applied to, right? And to apply potentially maybe to 3 jobs this week, right? By the end of the week. Number of examples of tasks, of course. If the goal, as another example, is to build and sustain healthy relationships with pro-social family members, then, we have to think about and consider what are the, again, steps to take to achieve that. We can list the costs and benefits of healthy relationships with pro-social family members by tomorrow. That seems realistic if you're going to maybe see the client tomorrow. Initiate contact with the family member this week. Invite family members to attend a gathering, of course, with socially distanced safety. These are things that take some time, of course, if you're not used to doing this work, in order to kind of think about what tasks it takes to really achieve those goals. But those are the things that we can do, along with the client. Sometimes it does take some practice, especially when you're not used to doing it, because to break down all of the different steps that it takes to reach a goal, does take some time and some thinking. But once you get into the practice of doing this, it becomes easier and easier. And once you're creating a culture of doing that in your agency, it does get quicker. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And oftentimes what I've seen agencies do is have a number of different sort of things that are ready at the desk for staff, in terms of the kinds of goals that are available, thinking about common goals that we might have around criminogenic needs. What are the common tasks that we might ask somebody to do? And of course, we have to talk about activities as well, which are the things that we're going to do to help the client achieve the goals. So for Melanie in the vignette that we sent out, right, if she's got, again, antisocial attitudes, maybe we're going to ask her to complete 1 behavior chain this week. For those of you who don't know what a behavior chain is, that's just something that helps really ground an understanding with clients about what it means to be doing cognitive behavioral work. and an understanding about attitudes driving behavior. So I don't really have time necessarily in the half hour that I have to go through that specific exercise, but this is what it looks like. It comes out of the work of the University of Cincinnati and their EPICS training and their EPICS interventions with staff. EPICS stands for Effective Practices in Community Supervision, right? We can literally map out in a situation for clients, develop this, talk about the situations that get them in trouble, consider what kinds of thoughts initially come into their head, right? Around maybe a buddy knocks on the door and wants to go, you know, start going to get high. Situation that oftentimes happens, right? What are the immediate thoughts that go through people's heads? What are the feelings that they get? And then what's the actual action if they were to think about how those thoughts relate to the action, right? So, and then of course we'd go through the long-term, short and long-term positive and negative benefits of that behavior. So it helps to start modeling how to have better thoughts around situations that get people in trouble, because highlighting, right, the difficult and challenging thoughts that people have oftentimes leads them to negative actions that are going to continue to get them cycling in and out of trouble. So maybe we sit at the desk and you know, I model that for her initially, and that's going to be the activity that I do. So activities are the things, right, that I do, that staff do in order to help the client achieve not just the lofty goal that we have for him or her, but also the tasks, right? We're going to be in this together. There's 3 different areas that can be sort of considered and thinking about activities. For those of you who are law enforcement, community corrections officers, or DOC staff, or court staff, right, court mandated and doing some levels of supervision, right, there's some realistic things that we have to be thinking about in terms of what we will be doing to check in on clients achieving their tasks and their goals. So supervision is one thing. We can think about, of course, the referrals that we can make, and then what are we going to do also in the in-person, face-to-face meetings. So when we talk about supervision, of course, there's a number of different things that we do as probation and parole staff, or DOC staff as correctional counselors, right? Talk about, you know, contacting our family, your work, your school. Oftentimes we're, you know, calling different agencies to make sure and check in on our clients and what's going on in treatment groups. Drug testing, you know, UAs, electronic monitoring, curfew checks, telephone contacts, right? There's a number of things. These is, of course, not an exhaustive list. But I think sometimes we forget everything that we're doing, not just on supervision, but particularly with making referrals and the things that we do every day to help clients really achieve, again, their goals. And those are important to write down for the client, because sometimes the client doesn't even know all the things that we're doing. You don't have to write everything down for activities, but it's helpful to sort of highlight the big picture of what you will be doing on his or her behalf. Referrals, right? Of course, we have a number of agencies that we work with in this capacity, right? Pro-social activities, family reunification, transportation, voc services. So what are the things that we might be thinking about that we could refer him or her to? And sometimes I've even seen, and I'll talk about this next week, creating a sort of service matrix of all of the different, right, agencies that we have partnership and cooperation with. If that's not centrally at your hand, sometimes we forget all the agencies and partnerships that we have. So those are good to create for agencies too. And then, of course, what we're going to do in the face-to-face meetings with clients, right? Progress updates, maybe we engage in some motivational interviewing, skill building, of course. Maybe we role play a particular skill because, you know, we need to be practicing those things with our clients. Our clients need to be practicing them, but you know, sometimes clients don't really always understand what role playing really looks like. And we know that's at the heart of cognitive behavioral interventions. So, An example of an activity, right? If the goal is to build and sustain healthy relationships with pro-social family members, the task would be, of course, during the next meeting, list costs and benefits of healthy relationships with pro-social family members. And then maybe what we do is to complete a cost-benefit analysis with the client to help start building motivation. A CBA or a cost-benefit analysis basically just maps out the short and long-term positive and negative benefits, positive and negative consequences of engaging in certain behavior. We know that our clients need really specific, concrete direction for a number of different reasons: learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, impulsivity. Just the structure is very, very helpful. So the cost-benefit analysis might be something we do. Coming back to our case plan, right? If we're talking about asking Melanie to complete one behavior chain this week, maybe, we can model it for her. We need to sort of show her what that's going to look like. And so we'll walk through that with her. That's what I'm going to do alongside her. And then, a final case plan, what this really starts to look like, because there's going to be multiple tasks associated, of course, with the goal of reducing antisocial attitudes. So not only are we going to ask Melanie and talk through with her ability and confidence in doing this to complete one behavior chain this week, but also, to participate and engage maybe in an MRT group, moral recognition therapy. So what are we going to do to help her participate and engage? Of course, we're going to enroll her in the group. It seems really basic, but there's a reason why we have to be that basic and that concrete, right? Monitor and reinforce her progress in MRT group, and reinforce her success when she actually completes it, right? Because we want to make sure that she knows it's not just about participating and engaging in it, but also completing it. And I know, again, coming back to what it sounds like in terms of being basic, it's basic for a reason, to have to be concrete. And then I'm going to sign it, and we're going to have Melanie sign it, because again, there's something about taking ownership of it. It sort of feels like a behavioral contract. And again, this provides concrete expectations for her. I can always pull this out and be like, we agreed to this, right? Talk to me about what's going on right now that you're not able to really achieve this. So it allows us to have some sense of accountability as well. All right, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to try to give enough time for questions today, because I feel like I didn't do that last week. All right.
Really, there is a question in the chat. Let me just go back to it. It just skipped. It says, what suggestions would you have for case managers who are meeting with clients only once a month? Does that change how, sorry, my chat just disappeared.
That's okay.
Does that change how you would set the goals if you're only meeting with folks once a month?
Oh, not necessarily. No. Good question. So depending upon, it depends. That's going to probably affect a little bit more of the activities and the tasks, but the goal is long-term anyway, right? The goal is to reduce antisocial attitudes, or significantly reduce maybe substance use, or to find legitimate employment. So it doesn't necessarily change the goal, but it might change a little bit in terms of some of the tasks and activities, because we want to be realistic about how often we're seeing the client. Good question. Other questions? Let me see if I can get to the chat too. Okay, now I see this question. Yeah, what suggestions would you have for case managers for a meeting with clients only once a month? Still a lot of change that we can do in meeting with folks every month. I'm assuming you probably meet with them maybe 15-20 minutes. And believe it or not, there's quite a bit we can do if we're very focused with our time in terms of thinking about that case plan. And then, Aureen, I don't know, I don't actually see are there questions? No.
There are no questions at the moment.
Okay. Let me ask a question then. What are the struggles? And we can just put it in the chat. What are the struggles that you're coming up against in trying to maybe doing this work? and really using risk assessment to its fullest potential using case plans? Is it time? Is it your caseloads? Do you feel like you don't have the practice of doing it? If you could put it in chat.
Sorry, Emily, there is one question. It says, it's from Christian. Antisocial attitudes can be hard to identify goals and tasks for. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about how difficult, I mean, it is difficult, right? So especially because when they have antisocial attitudes, there's usually a mentality of like, I don't really have a problem, you're my problem. The only problem is I got caught, right? And so I think starting to build motivation and identifying how attitudes really do affect people's behavior, and just, meeting the client where he or she is at, of course. If she's got significant antisocial attitudes, or he does too, and really, really obstinate and trying to work with you, then we roll with it. We say, okay, well, I want to talk to you just a little bit about how those attitudes are really serving you, right? And there's a reason why we have those attitudes, and we can say these things without judgment, and it's important that we try to do it without judgment. But this idea that I think sitting down and really mapping out, like the cost-benefit analysis, right? Like the behavior chain, and really trying to identify how those attitudes are driving people's behavior.
Emily, one of the attendees also says that they have problems with clients who don't follow through with what they've agreed on.
Yeah, I do that too. Right? Sometimes I don't follow through with things that I signed and agreed to too, right? And of course, there's some things that we can do before we just start trying to sanction people, because we know that just sanctioning people, of course, for not engaging in the behaviors that we're expecting them to, isn't always driving, isn't necessarily always going to change behavior. So yeah, again, bring back the case plan if you can, right? If you've got it with you, and try to work with that person to sort of identify and ask really what's going on. What are the barriers for you to be able to achieve and start doing this? Is it lack of motivation? Is it, because we're in a pandemic and I'm feeling depressed? Is it because, really trying to work with the client to understand. And, I want to say that case planning also doesn't work really well if we're not trying to build healthy relationships with professional boundaries with our clients. It becomes, you all are seeing, this stuff doesn't work if we're not starting to create safety and starting to create that rapport with people that are on our caseloads. And I know that takes time and it takes effort and it's difficult to do, but these are folks that absolutely can smell authenticity or inauthenticity a mile away. And if we're not genuine with our roles as coaches and not just referees, maybe some of you have heard that language too, particularly those of us who are probation and parole officers, it's not just our job to blow the whistle. We have to also, right, be our champion for our clients as much as we possibly can, of course, with professional boundaries. So that rapport starts to kick in even more when we're building the case plans. Okay, I believe time constraints are the most difficult obstacles we face. Yeah, and try to guide individuals to change. This also has something to do with caseload sizes, absolutely. We want to help people, but caseload sizes limit the amount of time we can spend with clients. And that's, again, I'd come back to talking and thinking about, are you using the risk assessment tool that you have in place to be able to make sure that you're identifying those high to moderate or medium risk clients, because those are the folks we really should be trying to spend as much time with, not just for supervision purposes, but with the interventions at the desk and with case planning. For those people who are low risk, right, we're going to triage them a little bit differently. So, of course, I'm not quite sure which agency you're from, but those are things that I would come back to and think about, because caseload size is obviously a legitimate concern. Yeah. Awesome. I think we're getting close to the end of time. I do want to just thank everybody for joining in on us with us today. It looks like we had about a little over 30 people today. So thank you. Hopefully it was a little bit helpful.
Okay. If there's no more questions, I think we better close. Thank you for participation today and for joining us for the seminar. We really hope that you found the information informative and useful. We know these sessions are short, so if you have any questions or comments after the closure of this meeting, you will see that Jessica placed our email in the chat, and you can most certainly email us at UCJC, UCJC@utah.edu. And our final session for this case management seminar will be next Thursday, the 24th of September. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.